I have to set up this thing, so I'll give you 1 minute just to turn to a person that you have been watching all morning here, but you don't know. And the question I wanted to start with this afternoon is to ask you that what is the problem that we should be trying to work out in education? Just one problem that you have in the top of your mind that should be somehow worked out here in Denmark. Okay? Not a list of 5 things, just one thing that you think is the most difficult, important problem to be solved here. Okay? I need about 1 minute to make this work, and then I'll get back to you. Okay? You don't need to solve the problem, just tell me what it is. So talk to somebody who is close to you. You know? If you don't like the person on your left-hand side, you can turn the other way around. Good. Now, you know, if I had more time here, I would like to collect some of these things and ask you to write on a flip chart what do you think is the problem. But I think the immediate conclusion would be that we would probably have about 50 different problems that people see as a kind of a burning things here in Denmark or globally. And I'm asking you this question because I learned yesterday, actually, when we had a wonderful dinner with Fleming and some other people, that Dr. Einstein has been here in this building, right? And Einstein said many wonderful things. One of them was that people were asking him that if you had 1 hour time to work on a problem, how would you spend that time? And he said that I would spend 59 minutes to define what is the problem, and then 1 minute to work it out. But you know, in education we do exactly the other way around. We spend 1 minute to understand what is the problem and then try to work it out 59 minutes. And that's why we are not moving anywhere. You know, one of my kind of messages that I want to send you this morning, or this afternoon actually, is that most of the world is going exactly the wrong way in education. So don't look around the world except Finland. But what's going on, because most countries are getting it wrong. What's happening around the world now is that people are trying to fix the system that is already outdated. It's becoming obsolete everywhere, including Finland. And it doesn't make any sense that we try to fix something that is not going to work anymore for most countries and for most people. So that's why I think the challenge that we have is, and the question that we all have here in Denmark and in Finland and all other countries, is that how does the education system look like? And we have heard about the architecture and these design things, wonderful ideas, how we should be designing the schools. But then the whole other thing is that how do we define and design the system of education? Okay? And that's what I'm gonna speak about a little bit. This presentation is not about Finland. So if you came here to listen to the Finnish education thing, you can leave now, because I'm not going to talk about that too much. This is not going to be too much about Denmark either, but I'm going to touch upon these things and ask you also to reflect on a little bit on these things. I have some things, I have some little video things and some music for you, so you can join me singing and dancing if you feel so happy this afternoon. But let me show you 3 things that really bothers my mind when I think about what we should be doing with our education system. The first one is the huge issue with youth unemployment around the world. You know, in Europe we have a population of the size of this country, Denmark, of young people unemployed. About 6 million Europeans are not having work. I'm talking about young people. Okay? So about 20% of European youth is unemployed. And I can tell you one thing, it's not going to get any better. This is not an issue that has been created because the economic crisis here. It's an issue of all sorts of other things. And if people believe that, and as soon as Europe can fix the economy, this thing will be somehow worked out, it's not going to happen. Okay? So we have 75 million young people, aged 15 to 24, around the world unemployed. It's 1 million more than it was year before, okay? And it's only going to get worse, okay? And the other estimate is that within the next 10 years, there will be 1.3 billion young people, aged 15 to 29, graduating around the world from different types of educational institutions, universities, polytechnics, vocational schools, and they're hungry for work. 1.3 billion people. And as we know now, only 300 million of them will find employment if they are looking for employment from the labor markets. So this is going to change everything. Very soon we're going to ask questions in our education systems here in Denmark and Finland, Europe and around the world. How should we educate these people? What are we going to do with these 1 billion young people who is never going to find a job? They will not find an employer, a person, a company who will give them a job. And my message is, like many others are saying, that if you don't find a job, create one. Make one for yourself. But then, if we ask ourselves, that are we educating people in our education systems to create their own jobs? We are not. We are preparing them for something that they are consuming. They're consumers of labor markets, not creators or change makers of their own things. And that's why our education systems are, as we know them now, are not going to be able to help this problem, no matter how well kids know math and reading and science and all these things. It's not going to help. Then the other one is that we have an increasingly fast-changing world. Okay, this is what Fleming already said in your introduction here, that the world is changing, and I think many people do not understand how the world changed. Is there anybody in the room who was born in the 1990s here? Wow, stand up, stand up. 1990s, let's give a good hand to this young lady here. Wonderful, only one, okay? And I can tell you people that my generation, most of us, we don't really understand what's happening, what's going on here. And these young people, they have a very, very different view to the world. You were born when all these computers and mobile phones, they were around already. So you were born in a world where people were not asking what should we do with these things. Most of us others, we were born in a world where none of these things were existing. And that's why I'm going to show you something that my friend, a good friend of mine, is leading a school and a project in Queensland in Australia. This is a very short kind of a clip about how the world will look like in 2028. And this 2028 is the year because that's the year when the pupils who were creating this film are going to leave the school. Okay, just take a look. It's about 1 minute. So this is a project in one school where the kids are thinking about where we are going and how well prepared we are in a world like this. I'm going to have another question for you in a second, and it's one of those things that you saw over there. That is it technology that is going to help us to work out all these things, including education. So is the technology going to be the solution? So think about this for a moment. But my third one is the thing that has been already discussed here a couple of times, and it's the declining status and situation of our teachers, not only here in Denmark, but around the world, meaning that the teachers are not valued and teachers are not enjoying what they do to the extent that they used to do around the world in different parts. 19% of teachers in Europe, 19%, 1 of 5 teachers in this continent feels that what they do in a school is valued by the society. It's exactly the same figure here in Denmark as far as the middle school teachers are concerned. I don't know about primary school teachers or high school teachers, but it's a fairly low rate of people who are working in our schools with our children who think or who feel that what they do with the kids is somehow valued by the people in the society. And this is not the situation that we can continue with. Something needs to be done to these things. Let me take you back 15 years now. This is a conference of history, right? The history of education, and you already had about 500 years and 200 years of history. I'm going to take you back 15 years. If this was the year 2000, we had an education conference like this. Let's say that this is a European forum for educators, and there would be the education ministers from all European countries, year 2000 there. And somebody was asking the question that, where do you think is the best education system in the world? More than half of the education ministers in Europe would have raised their hand and said that my country has. If not the best, but one of the best education systems in the world. Simply because we didn't know that much. We didn't have these PISA studies and others to reliably or less reliably to compare countries, but nevertheless. I know that Denmark is one of the countries where there's a lot of skepticism for the OECD PISA study. But you know, my point is that when people don't know how the country's systems are doing, then most people think, like Sweden, for example. Is there any Swedish people here? Sweden was one of those countries that had a firm belief, and Norway, that they have the best education system in the world because of the heavy investment and spending and all these things that they had done over there. You know, there was one country in this room 15 years ago who would have not said anything about the quality of an education system, and that was Finland. You know, Finns, we don't really care where we are in these international league tables, as long as we are better than Sweden. But other than that, it has been very kind of a disgusting thing in a way for the Finns to be compared to other countries, even now when the PISA has been around for 15 years. But Finland has never intended to be anywhere high in these international rankings, and we still don't. You know, if you go and talk to your Finnish education school colleagues, they don't really want to talk about the PISA and these studies because Finnish people don't think about education like this. And that's why, you know, if your country is aiming to be somewhere in the PISA league tables, talk to your politicians and say that it's not a good idea to think about education as a competition against other countries. It's not the way to improve your education, because it will shift your focus on more important things to those things that are measured and calculated. You know, this is how the league table looked like, and I'm not really a great fan of ranking these countries, but I just want to make one point. But this is how it looked like in year 2001 in December, when the first time these results came out. And you see, this was a huge surprise to Finns that we were there number 1, and we were very happy to see that Sweden was number 9. But that was a day of a kind of a that changed everything in educational thinking. In one day when these results came about, because there were so many countries that were hoping to be very high in these international rankings, and they were not. You know, in Finland, people often ask me that, so how did Finland react to this thing in December? I was a university professor that time in Helsinki, and I remember that the first thing that happened was that we started to make phone calls to one another to say that, how do we explain this? And nobody had a clue. We didn't have any history of Finnish education that time. So we had all sorts of kind of speculations and guesses. What would it be? Some people said it must be a teacher education. Some people said that we have a wonderful curriculum. And no, we have an excellent Ministry of Education and they know how to manage these things. And textbooks and all these things were mentioned. But people really didn't have any idea. So, well, it comes a little bit later. Yeah. But you know, the conclusion that the Finns made, and this is very interesting, was that we decided to do nothing. Because we thought that maybe the OECD made a mistake. And maybe Finland should be somewhere there where Sweden was. And we decided to do nothing and just wait for another 3 years when the next OECD study comes around and see where we are then. If this had happened to Swedes, I can tell you, you know what would have happened in a 2002 winter? You have found the IKEA of education around the world, selling Swedish educational solutions and services, how to fix the school system. But Finns are not like this. We are not very good in business or turning good ideas into kind of a profitable things like this. We still don't have anything to sell in our education system after these 15 years because we think that education is probably for something else. So this is what happened 3 years later, and you will see that Finland is still there on the top, but we still thought in my country that maybe the OECD made the same mistake twice. And let's wait another 3 years to see where we are, and this is a 2006 study published in late 2007, and only then, you know, after these three consecutive PISA studies, there started to be a more kind of a hype about the Finnish system, not in Finland, but in other countries, when people started to visit our schools and universities and ask these questions, and so you have to explain somehow what was going on. And then that's when the teacher story became kind of a real, one of the common explanations was that Finland has great teachers. I think we have great teachers, but I think that the great teachers will not make the difference here in the Finnish case. That it's not because of teachers. It's wonderful to have great and highly educated teachers, but it's not the explanation there. So that's how the world looked like. And two things happened after this, and this is my point what I want to make here. Two things happened. One is that there were two types of global international discourses where, or conversations were launched. The one was that what is common with all of these countries, these so-called high-performing or successful education systems that seem to be continuously there on the top or close to the top of these international league tables. And now it's a research field. So people are doing a lot of research. They're studying Singapore and South Korea and Canadian provinces and Finland and some other countries to see what could explain this high performance there. It's a very common field of research now in different countries in different ways. But then the other one was that what's wrong with those countries that are not able to perform well, or why Sweden and some other countries are kind of declining and they are putting a lot of money in their system, but nothing is happening there. Is there something that is common with all those countries that are not really able to, you know, go there where they always wanted to be? Okay, so that's why I have this little. It's not really a theory. It's a story or kind of a intellectual framework that helps me to understand this latter question. Okay, and I like this global educational reform movement because it gives you a nice acronym, GERM. Do you know what germ is? It's like a virus or something that makes you sick, because I think that in education policy often these ideas, bad ideas, behave exactly like infections and viruses. You know, you have this bird flu thing or some type of thing, and they travel with agents, with people. And in my story, this agent is typically an education minister or consultant, McKinsey, or the OECD, when they infect education systems with the ideas that are not really helpful. You know, I have changed my view to educational theories a lot. When I was a young Finn, I had a kind of a passion to become a teacher when I went to teacher education in my early 20s. And I had two theories how to educate, how to raise children, but I didn't have any kids that time. Now I have two boys, but no theories anymore. That's what happens often. So these are some of those things, and you have heard some of those ideas already here earlier this morning. Competition. Some people believe that the best way, the good way to enhance the performance of the entire education system is to insist that the schools have to compete against one another. I don't know if Simon is here still. He was speaking about that, and he referred to the Danish story. There's a lot of research about this. Most of the research nowadays conclude that school competition where the schools are competing over enrollment against one another is not really able to improve the overall quality of educational service. So it's a very well-known thing. Standardization is another one. People say that if we standardize teaching and learning and assessment, all these kind of key areas of teachers' work, planning, teaching and assessment, somehow the quality will improve. And again, we know through research and large-scale case studies that this is not going to be helpful. Standardized testing, this is something that you see all around the world, that young people are tested more and more. Here in Denmark, you have this new external student assessment, right? Where the data is then used for all sorts of purposes, and then the school choice. You have 15% of your kids here in this country are going to private schools, and this kind of appearance of private schools is really one of the main means of facilitating school choice in the school system. Sweden is a good example. Even Norway is doing this right now, and all around the world you will see more and more alternative schools. So this is how the germ, this virus, has spread around the world since early mid-1980s. It all started in England here in 1988. Education Reform Act went to United States, kind of accelerated the policies over there, then New Zealand, Australia, and then the rest of the world. So this is my assessment, my view of how this global education reform movement infection map looks like right now. By the way, if you want to have these slides, I have tweeted them this morning when I was supposed to be here. And again, this afternoon, you just log into my Twitter account and you can download all these slides, so you don't need to take pictures anymore. But this is really a global thing. So in all of these places where you see red dots, even you see Stockholm has this little red dot over there. You can see this competition, standardization, testing, school choice, and many other things. And the consequences look something like this in many places. You heard about Singapore earlier this morning, and if you go to China and South Korea, you often see tired children and very unhealthy kids nowadays because of the parents, and the system is insisting them to perform better and better and work longer and longer hours. These little kids in China are taking a nap so that they can learn a little bit more and then go to school in the evening when they go home. This is another one, people often ask, so what evidence do we have about the germ? Maybe it has been a good thing. Maybe the competition and these things have been able to improve educational performance. But just take a look at these things. This is again, the OECD data. It's about the best way to, and the only way really to compare these things. You will see the countries, United States, England, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Netherlands, and Sweden in 5 consecutive OECD PISA tests in mathematics, and you will see that all of these countries, none of these countries have been able to get any better. Most of these are experiencing kind of a declining performance, which is not speaking in favor of this type of germ-related policies. So what is the alternative way? What would be the way for Denmark or those countries who have found that this type of global movement is not going to help or be helpful or solve the problems? Rather than unhealthy competition, let me give you a good example of what is the unhealthy competition. Two guys were hiking in northern Sweden in a hiking path, and they came to an area where there was a sign that this area has wild bears. So the other guy stopped and he took his backpack off and hiking boots off and put the running shoes on. And the other fellow said that, but what are you doing? Because you can never run faster than the bear. And he said, I know that, but I'm going to run faster than you. And this often happens in education too, that we kind of it seems like we are cooperating and doing these things together, but when the serious times come, then it doesn't work like this. So that's why I think it's very important that our education policies and the whole education culture is supporting and encouraging somehow collaboration at all levels of life in schools, between kids and teachers and principals and school systems and communities and regions. And this is not only a kind of a technical thing between the individuals, this is also a policy thing, how education policies are helping and encouraging us to do the collaboration. There's a lot of evidence now about the role of social capital in educational improvement, saying that it's actually social capital that is driving the improvement and enhancement in education, not human capital. And that's why this raises questions like how much should we invest our resources into individuals, whether they're teachers or principals or whoever they are, and how much we should invest in cooperation, in people, but through cooperation, so that these investments would help people to do these things together. Whether it's more time for planning and teachers to do these things together or teach together or something else, but the social capital seems to be a very important part there. Standardization, I think the alternative direction could be personalization or individualized, more individualized way of educating kids. Sometimes people also say that creativity is a kind of alternative for standardization, that how to maintain the creativity that kids and curiosity that kids have. A wonderful story is from my friend Sir Ken Robinson, who is often telling this story that he went to see a classroom where the second grade children were having mathematics. So it's about 8-year-old children's classroom, and everybody else in the classroom were doing mathematics except one girl in the back row. And he wanted to know what this girl is doing, so they went to see this little girl in the back row, and she was passionately drawing something. And the teacher said that this little girl is horrible in mathematics. She doesn't understand a thing, so I'll let her to draw things. So Ken asked her that, so what are you drawing? And she said, I'm drawing a picture of God. And then the teacher said that, but nobody knows how God looks like. And she said, they will in a minute. You know, this is how kids think about when they don't have a solution. But further they go into school, they kind of lose these types of things, and they don't do any more these types of things because we educate them out of creativity rather than into it. Okay, the testing thing, the data and testing thing, that is a very strong movement around the world. The alternative is to trust people and systems more and enhance professionalism of teachers and school principals. This is a very important aspect of the Finnish way of thinking. Actually, all of these, but particularly this professional thing. I think we need some type of data and some type of standardized data as well, but we don't need it anywhere near the amount that we are having in many countries right now. And then finally, the equity thing. And this is a tricky one because equity is a word that people have different definition. People understand equity or equality in the different ways. Equity in education for me here is a very simple thing. It means that we look at where the kids come from, and then how well they're doing in the school system. Everywhere, here in Denmark, in Finland, all around the world, there's a positive correlation or negative correlation between the children's family background and how well or how poorly they do in the school system everywhere. It's the same thing everywhere, that if the child comes from the single parent, immigrant, temporarily employed, lowly educated family, those kids are more often than others finding it difficult to be successful in the school system. And the other way around, if you are a child born in parents of academic professions and training with wealth and ability to support their learning, those children often do much better in the school system. But the interesting thing is that countries are performing very differently in terms of this equity. And now what I'm going to show you is, and argue actually, is that the equity is another measure of educational performance as well as the excellence. But I have this question for you, this technology, just one second. Do you think technology will help us to work out all these burning questions in educational improvement or not? No? Yes? Okay. Take a look at this.
Emma. Huh? Emma. Not anymore. Emma. Every day it's getting on my nerves. Emma. Oh, I'm Emma. Emma.
Okay, so you have to be careful what you want, because it may come true and then you're in trouble. Okay, let me close by giving you 3 things that we should be paying attention to for the when we are building the future school systems, and whether it's here in Denmark or Finland or wherever. The first one is I'm using the term systems excellence. So nobody else is talking about that in education, but I try to launch this kind of idea that we should be thinking about systems performance through excellence of the system, which includes many things. But in my kind of a simplified graph here for you, when I speak about systems excellence, I include these 2 main dimensions. These are not the only ones, but these are the 2 kind of important ones. One is the vertical there, the excellence or quality of learning outcomes. So we need to be concerned about how kids learn different things in the school system, or are they learning these things that they should be learning, mostly knowledge and some skills as well. Then the horizontal line is the equity line. So when you move from left to right in this equity axis, it means that the equity at the level of the system gets stronger. Okay, so if the education system is somewhere here, on this side of the graph, it means that countries that fall out somewhere here, they have more equity within their system. In other words, the children's family background doesn't determine so much of their success or failure in the school than the education systems that find themselves here. So the less equity is here and more equity is here, higher quality is here and lower quality here. Now, my question to you, this data is again from the OECD database, so if you are sick and tired of OECD PISA, or if you don't believe it at all, if you think that it's all wrong, you can close your eyes for the next 3 minutes. But if you think that it can help us to understand some of these things, not necessarily the entire, the final truth, there's something interesting for you here. Now, my question to you is that where would you place, if this is the international average of equity and quality or excellence here, where would you place Denmark? Where do you think Denmark is? Left and up or down? In the middle, okay? Quite good, because this is where Denmark is in 2012, the latest. There's just a little bit below the international average, but you have an issue with equity and equality, as you know it here. This is not a big news. Some of it may be associated to the increasing number of segregation through private schools and school choice in general. Some of them may have some other things. This is the United States. You know, it's interesting that the United States, as a much more complex and diverse place than Denmark, has more equity in its public school system than you have here. Okay, the quality is more or less the same. This is Australia. This is England or United Kingdom. And this is Canada. Now, this place where Canada is, it's also called heaven. Heaven is a place where excellence, quality and strong quality and strong equity meet. So everybody would like to be heaven. I'm sure that when your minister is here, she would, her dream also is to be somewhere there where Canada is. These are the other countries. You will see Sweden, most of the EU countries there. And this is where the high achievement and strong equity meet. So you have South Korea, Japan, Estonia, and Canada over there in heaven. And otherwise, if you look at this, you will see that it's almost like a stairway to heaven. Remember this song?
There's a lady who's sure all that glitters is gold, and she's buying the stairway to heaven.
You cannot buy your way to heaven, but you have to work on. Where's Finland? Good question. Where do you think Finland is? Let me show you. This is where Finland was in 1970s. You know, when we had a kind of a parallel school system where we segregated kids, often based on their family background and socioeconomic status in the family, and gave a good education to people like myself or my colleague over there, where we went to universities and get all these benefits, but most people didn't have this luxury, okay? And I'm going to show you what has happened during the last 30 or 40 years. If you look at this most beautiful flag in the world, the Finnish flag, you will see this is a Finnish way. And you know, that's what has made our country kind of an interesting place for many people. They don't want to know necessarily, you know, what makes these good results in the Pisa study. But when people know a little bit more about Finland, they know that Finland started 30 or 40 years ago in just the average or below average country in equity and equality. And so what has happened to move that way? And you see that there was this little loop, so we have been coming back a little bit, mostly because of the losing equity in the system, so the quality has also declined. But my theory here is that equity and quality in education system seem to be connected. They walk hand in hand, and that's why, and this is what the OECD is also saying, and this is all the credit to the work of the OECD. Without the PISA data, we would not know this. But we know this only now because of the data that we have available is that it may be that the best way to enhance quality, overall learning outcomes in the system like Denmark would be to enhance seriously equity of the system, not to invest in primarily on those quality things. There are some places, some countries here, if you look at this little flag over there, or this one, this is the Netherlands. Yeah, the Netherlands it's almost like so knocking on heaven's door. Remember that song?
I feel I'm knocking on heaven's door.
If you feel happy, you can sing along with me.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
Come on, people. You're happy people.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
I want to hear you, people. Come on.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
You want to go to heaven? You have to knock the door.
Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Yes. You need a little bit beer before you can sing, yeah? Okay, so my second one, so this is the first one, is to invest in systems excellence, which in other words, make sure that we understand what equity in education means and what it takes to enhance equity there. One of the things that you probably need to do here in this country more is to define and redefine what special education means and how do you implement that new policy so that you identify the needs, special needs of the children early on and can provide help immediately as the Finnish system and some others are doing. The other one, my proposal is that if we really want to take seriously this huge increasing youth unemployment and the worsening situation of having more and more young people who never find a job, we have to think about education system also as a place where we educate change makers. This is my mission at my university right now when I work. In every class I teach, I said I want you to be change makers. And I try to help people to understand what it is to think like a change maker. There are some of these things, this is a longer story, but some of these kind of a basic elements of being a change maker, somebody who is able to create, not just consume, but create new things and create employment for him or herself, are things like understanding what is empathy and make sure that everybody, all the students and all the kids have these skills related to being able to put him or herself in the position of another person and see, how things look like from outside. Collaboration, leadership, all these things are becoming important. Some people are going even further than myself, like people like Tony Wagner, for example, is saying that most of the knowledge in school is becoming obsolete because people can now learn everything, all the knowledge that they usually used to be a monopoly of the school, they can learn it outside of the school. So we don't need to worry about teaching knowledge that much as we used to do, but we need to make sure that everybody will get these things that they need in their lives. And finally, this is my last one here, is that we need to redefine the purpose of schooling. Why do we have schools? I don't know how much you guys have been thinking about that here in Denmark, but this is going to be a serious question for all of us. Why should kids come to school? What is the place that we try to do there? It's not anymore giving everybody the knowledge and skills that they need in their lives. There will be much more powerful and fast and more dynamic ways for kids to learn these things, okay? And I'm offering you my own idea, and this is my vision for the future of the school, is that the role of the school should be to help pupils to understand the world around them and the talent within them, okay? So these two dimensions, understand where you are, with whom you are, and where you live, and also your own self. What do you want to do? What is your talent? And the school should be able to help people to find this talent. I believe that everybody has a talent somewhere there, but it's often like natural resources that you have to drill deep. And with many people, you have to drill really deep to be able to find where the talent is. Just like when people are looking for oil or gas, it's not easy. It's a difficult thing for many people. And that's why I really love this idea of future of the schooling, where young kids understand the world around them and the talents within them. Okay? And we have to learn languages, right? Well, let me show you what happens if you don't master languages.
Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions for Pasi?
When Finland obviously is so successful, then why do you think our politicians don't do what you do? Why don't they imitate you? Why do we imitate Sweden? I know you probably don't know the answer, but I would like to hear what you think of that.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very good thing, actually, that ministers and politicians don't try to imitate and copy other systems. I'm often, I've been seeing during my last 15 years, thousands of people visiting Finland, and one of the first things I always tell them that don't try to be like Finland. Don't copy what we have been doing, because it's most likely not going to be successful. So I think what is much more important for Denmark and Sweden and all the other countries, including Finland, is to understand why Finns are doing things in a different way, and then try to understand why you don't do those things, or why you do your things in an own way. And that's much more sustainable way of finding the solutions here or any other country than trying to do what the Finns are doing. If Danish politicians are copying Sweden, that's a pity, of course, because Sweden and Swedish politicians are not at all happy with what they are having and what they do, and they try to find a better way out of this thing. So, but we are still in a very, very early phase of this international cooperation in education for politicians. Many politicians, it's easy to say that we do what England or Australia or Finland or some other countries are doing, rather than really trying to understand from their own point of view and their own cultural foundations what is the best way to move forward. But there are some lessons. In my book, I'm writing lengthy about these lessons that Finland can offer. But I'm saying in the first page of my introduction, actually say that don't take these things, don't copy these things and try to bring them anywhere, because it's not going to work like this.
Hello, thank you, Pasi Sahlberg. It was very, very interesting. I'm Camilla Sløk, and I'm doing research at Copenhagen Business School. So I'm very interested in your focus on unemployment and what are the disciplines that we need to teach the children in order to make them capable of creating their own work. There's a lot of research on entrepreneurship and innovation and so on, but what are the actual disciplines that pupils need to learn in ground school in order to create that own job?
Play. I think this is the best discipline I know in school, is to make sure that all young people and children can play, that they understand what play is. And by play, I don't mean something that you do when you don't have anything else to do. But play is, for me, play is a form of being a human being. It's one of the basic conditions that we all have. We are playful individuals. But our school systems are designed, and the architecture plays one role in that. You were speaking about that, how the school design is taking away this play. It's not the place where you can have fun or exercise these things. I think the main challenge we have now in many countries, particularly in places like Singapore and China, is that we are having increasing number of young people who seriously claim that they don't have imagination, that they cannot imagine things. they cannot create ideas because it's something that belongs to some other people but not to me. And that's why I would actually like to see the future of the school, not just a kind of a multidisciplinary school, but an anti-disciplinary school, where we do things that doesn't fit into any kind of a formal, conventional category of knowledge or tradition. But that's why I think that the play is extremely important. And yesterday somebody informed me that some people here in Denmark have an intention to try to beat Chinese, or that some people are upset that they are not able to beat Chinese in education. I think you have to change the rules in these games and start to look at the Danish education and this culture through the play and creativity. And Denmark is #1 country in the international civic competence study. That is a very important part of the life. Finland is #2 there. But let's think about different types of disciplines that we need to do. I'm not so much concerned about these traditional ways. I'm not even so concerned about the entrepreneurial learning or entrepreneurship. I think that's something that comes from something else. If we are not able to maintain the creativity and curiosity and make sure that all the kids understand the importance of play, it doesn't matter what the subjects are in the school, because they are not going to help us. So that's why this change maker metaphor that comes from the social entrepreneurship concept is a kind of an interesting thing for the future. Empathy, leadership, cooperation. Why not call them disciplines rather than subjects?
Thank you. Pasi, I'm just wondering, if you now should find a new way to educate teachers for the future, what you just told me here, how would you put together a curriculum for a new teacher's education?
Yeah. Wonderful thing. People often praise the Finnish teacher education, but we have a kind of emerging awareness in Finland now that our world-class teacher education system is desperately outdated. And this is not only my view, but this is the view of many of the teacher educators. And particularly if you interview the young teachers who graduate from our master's degree programs into the schools, they say that this is not what we need. This is not preparing us to work in this type of new world. So, if I knew how to design a world-class teacher education program, I probably wouldn't be spending my time here and trying to talk to you about these things. I would be doing something, trying to change the world through that. But I think that I think we probably should start thinking about how to prepare teachers from these new concepts. Many of them have been mentioned here this morning earlier. Collaboration, personalized learning, flipped classrooms where technology will be enabler of some things rather than some other things. Most of the teacher education programs in most of the countries don't do any of these things. And that's why I think it's not the question of what type of curriculum there is, but what is the kind of a form of teacher education, how teachers should be prepared so that they would be able to work in the schools that would look a little bit like this. But I don't have a better answer than this to your great question.
Thank you. One last question.
I agree that you shouldn't copy what other countries do, but you get become inspired. And one of the things we, by visiting Finland, were inspired of was the support from politicians, from the whole establishment, and especially from the parents. The parents support the schools very much. And that was item number 2, how to hire the recognition and the status of the teachers. And could you explain how that change came along in 30 or 40 years in Finland, but because you were very poor in the shadow of Russia and not very well educated?
Being a neighbor of Russia is sometimes a good thing, because we very much wanted to be unlike Russia and more like Sweden and Denmark and Norway. So it was really a kind of a driver of this change. But great question again. I think one thing that distinguishes Denmark and Sweden on one side, and then Finland on the other side. If you look at the history of schooling during the last 30 years, is that you have seen many more changes here through the politics and policy of education, where sometimes you go that way and then the other year you go, or other government will go the other way. Sweden has probably done even more of those things. The previous minister in Sweden, somebody told me that I was in Stockholm yesterday, and they said that every Monday when he came to the office, he had a new reform in mind. And this is obviously, if you're a teacher in a school or school principal, you very quickly learn this, that you don't need to really pay attention to what these people in Stockholm or Copenhagen are saying, because they come with these frequent ideas. You know, Finland has never done that. We have had this same inspiring idea of what type of school system we want to have in the country for the last 40 years. We still have. We still have the same vision that we had 40 years ago. 40 years ago, we wanted to build a system starting from this unequal and lower than average quality system of education to such that provides great school for every kid. We wanted to have a great school for every child in Finland, regardless where they are living or what type of parents they have. And we still have the same thing, that we want to make sure that the system is good for every single child. And we have done during the last 40 years all sorts of things to help the country to accomplish this dream. And this is not the case here in Denmark. This is not the case in Norway or Sweden, that are culturally very similar to Finland. And I'm often saying that this is one reason why Denmark and Finland are performing differently in these international comparisons and studies. Not only these league tables, but how the systems are different. Is that if you're a teacher and school principal here, and you know that the system will change 180 degrees when there's a new politics or politician leading, your approach to what you do is very different than in Finland, if you know that it doesn't matter who the minister is, who is the ruling party, because we will continue to work on the same way. And this is often where this respect to teachers as professionals in Finland comes from, that they are trusted professionals to do these things in their school. So somebody was asking me yesterday that what would be my one lesson or advice to the Danish government to do these things for the future. My response was that I never give any advice to anybody if I don't really understand what's going on in the schools. But one good idea that all of the high-performing successful education systems have done is that they all have invested in creating a powerful, inspiring idea that parents and students and teachers and principals and employers, everybody, the whole society can commit to. And they understand what are we trying to do here. And then stick with that. Work on that. Try to make sure that whoever comes after you will continue to work from this. It's often difficult to do, but it's interesting that Ontario, Alberta, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, to some extent, and Finland certainly, all of this, and Estonia now, they all have the same characteristics within their thinking of education. So that's why I think it would be a good idea here to try to work more on that type of clear vision and idea for the Danish school. I don't know if you have in mind, or if you know what the dream here in Denmark is, you may have it. But in Sweden they don't. That I know from yesterday. Thank you so much for your interest. Thank you.